Welcome to the Find My Catalyst podcast. We all have problems we're looking to solve. We know that there are solutions out there, but we struggle with this. How do we find the solution? Where does the nudge come from to help us take the next step, start solving tough problems? This podcast is designed to help you find your catalyst, take that next step. I'm Mike Simmons. I am the managing partner of Catalyst Acts. As you know, we've rebranded the podcast. We're doing this to help get the business and the podcast out to more people. I am really excited about my guest today. My catalyst today is Adam Pasch. I met Adam through Amy Volas and Scott Leese's group, Thursday Night Sales. We had a chance to spend some time together out in Florida at one of the events that Amy and Scott put on. And I think you're really going to enjoy this discussion. It covers a number of different topics, including the importance of relationships in the selling motion and in our go-to-market motion. It also highlights the importance of clarity in understanding the problems you solve for, who you serve, and how you communicate that to others. Let's get to the conversation. Adam, it is good to see you. And before we hit record, which is one of the mistakes I make often, sometimes I should just start hitting record right when we start a conversation because there's a couple of pieces that will pop out. I want to talk about category creation when it comes to go-to-market approaches. When I say category creation, when it comes to go-to-market approaches, what comes to mind?
Well, first of all, Mike, awesome to talk to you with you again. So glad to have found this time. The category creation, it's interesting. My thought goes in a couple places. The first is what we were talking about, product-led growth. Oh my God. And I'm blanking on all of the others right now. Between
marketing-led growth, ecosystem-led growth was one that you threw out, which I thought was really good.
Right.
Like evangelist-led growth. We've got all the led growths.
That's right. And I'm really focused on referrals right now. And folks are thinking are these customer referrals? Are these partner referrals? Are these affiliates? Are these I spent 10 years consulting, supporting the Department of Defense. And at one point, I wrote a dictionary for my new team members joining that had upwards of 600, 700 acronyms in there. Enough so that AMC can either mean Army Material Command or Air Force Army Material Command or Air Mobility Command. So you had to say AMC Green or AMC Blue. So I am acronymed out. And so I like the sound of ecosystem-led growth, but it doesn't help the people that need to learn about it. The acronyms don't help them. And I care about speaking in plain language way more than being the guy that invents the next new acronym. This is all just facets of the go-to-market.
Okay, give me a couple of your favorite DoD acronyms.
Oh, FUBAR is a great one. BOGSAT is one of my others. So a BOGSAT is a bunch of guys standing around a table. You have a BOGSAT. We need to have a quick meeting. Your Monday morning stand up, it's a BOGSAT. It's been a few years. I'll have to think of some of the others, but FUBAR and BOGSAT are some of my favorite.
And what's awesome is you say those out loud and you roll the acronym out, or you roll the words out associated with the acronym. And we all smile because we know what they mean. And we have those things that happen in meetings. Yet, for whatever reason, when people make the transition from the public sector to the private sector and have demonstrated leadership skills in theater, in combat situations, we still question whether or not they have the right experience to go and lead a team of people running a startup. And it drives me absolutely fucking batshit crazy. So
100%. I can't remember who it was, but there's a conversation on LinkedIn about somebody transitioning out. There's transition assistance programs for service members as they're exiting service and entering civilian world. And there's rarely many folks from this SaaS startups, venture capital backed businesses that are showing up and showing that this is a career path as an option. But when you can think of many 27-year-old service members that were in charge of $1 million budgets, there are plenty of 40-year-old, 20 years in SaaS people that have not had the same level of budget, much less with life and death stakes. So no, the folks coming out of the military may not have direct one-to-one SaaS experience, but have massive experience that is easily transferable, especially in the partnerships world, because working between multiple commands and between multiple service branches is a whole other level of collaboration that, frankly, what we do in the marketing tech space is easy in comparison.
Well, and oh, by the way, many of the people out there who like to push SaaS experience didn't have SaaS experience before they got into it. So, like, come on, people. Like,
nailed it.
So a couple acronyms. After AAR, after action review, it's the same thing as a debrief that you have after a call. You could even look at some of the post-mortem and pre-mortem work that comes out of Army TRADOC and red teaming. Like there are these skills that people build over time where they apply tools to lead large groups of people in really tough situations. And if you've not taken time to interview somebody inside your organization with military experience because they didn't have SaaS experience, you are missing out on an opportunity. But that's not what this podcast is about. If you want to hear that kind of stuff, check out the episodes with Dave Burke or Mike Sorelli or Dan Bradley or a number of the other folks that have been on before. Adam, so let's talk about referrals and why are referrals important to you?
So referrals are important to me for a couple of reasons. One, it really comes down to relationships first, because what matters to me is the relationships. So when we look at SaaS resumes as an example, very few tenures longer than 5 years, many tenures between 9 and 18 months, industry-wide, right? For many, many reasons. And so given that, we know that many of us, our careers are going to span much longer than the current company that we're with. And we also know that every company that we interview with or a company that's hiring would love to see someone who comes with a Rolodex, knowing that the Rolodex isn't enough, right? You have to know your process because you're going to burn through your Rolodex pretty quick, but your whole Rolodex isn't going to be in the market at the same time. And so we need to learn how to build and leverage these relationships. But the challenge that I've always run into, especially in enabling a team to have this kind of relationship-based sell, is all of our short-term incentives are about, I need to hit quota this quarter. And that runs counter to the timeline it takes to build and sustain a relationship. But when you get referrals to work, great example. Today at 10 a.m., I connected two people together. By 11:30, the demo was booked. The person I sent the referral to did no prospecting other than built a relationship with me 2 years ago. Now, that's not the first referral I've sent to them, but when you can, out of the blue, have a demo dropped in your lap 90 minutes after an introduction, you tell me, Mike, would that make for an impactful thing on your teams if you can figure out how to make that scale?
It absolutely would and has. There's a reason why a number of the clients that I've worked with early in my career will still respond when I send text messages to them. And it isn't because I was selling or implementing SmartForce or Skillsoft or O'Reilly or any of these tools. It was because I was known as someone who would help them solve problems. And I was constantly listening and engaged and deeply interested in the challenges that they were working through. Because of that genuine curiosity and interest, I learned a lot from them, and I was able to connect them with others who could help them solve the problem. So I can tell you my entire business to date has been built based on referrals. And fortunately, I still have a decent enough reputation in the marketplace to be able to say that out loud. And it's because you pay attention to people, and people have problems. We don't need to manufacture problems. Like, people have real problems. It would be awesome as if we could get out there and help solve those problems faster. And that's where those partnerships have really helped me in the past. Is that what you've seen?
Absolutely. And you've hit on a couple really useful things there. I think one of them you mentioned, you didn't say trusted advisor, but that's how I took it. It's the phrase I like to use.
Yep.
But as that genuine curiosity, as you're digging into the real problems of people, the thing that you sell, the problem you solve, or the gain you create, the job you help get done, that may not be their priority right now. But if they opened up to you and you were able to garner that attention that allowed you to uncover what the top priority is, well, look, it may not be in market for what you're doing, but if you know somebody or two people or three people that solve that other pain, And you can make 1, 2, 3 introductions. Any more than that, and it's not going to be high quality anymore. But everybody would love to be able to triple bid from places that you trust. Now you can be that trusted advisor. You are that connector to those other 3 people who would love to know that they're getting a shot, one of 3 people that this person's being introduced to, right? You just cut out all the riffraff. Whether they win or lose, they're going to be appreciative of you giving them a ticket to the show. The person you connected them to is going to have a high likelihood of getting that immediate problem solved. And more importantly, when you follow up with them in 4 months, everybody else that was trying to hit them at the same time in 4 months, they're following up with like putting it on your radar, circling back, following up, blah, 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 blah. But what you're saying is, hey, Mike, you mentioned that was a problem. I connected you to these 3 people. Were one of them able to support you? Oh, they were? How were they supported? That's fantastic. Now that you solved this, is this other thing a problem yet? Let's start talking about that. Oh, now we're in a deal cycle because you're coming back with relevance and you're also reminding them how you already helped them. And if you want to cut through the mailbox noise, I can't think of a better way of doing it. And along the way, remember, you just created 3 other allies on what everybody else logged as a closed lost opportunity.
What I love is the highlight on how important it is to focus on impact and playing a much longer term game, not getting caught into this trap. Like you had said earlier about some of the incentives that are in place we got to close, get the business now. We got to get it in for the quarter. Like all of those other things that end up trying to transfer a problem that's on our side over to somebody else. So I really like the long game thinking around this. How has your thinking evolved over time? We met through a community group. We met through TNS, Thursday night sales. It's not a thing anymore. And we were in Florida, in the panhandle of Florida in April of last year, April of 2022. We had a chance to chat in the back of a van as you were Ubering me, or somebody, I think Robert was Ubering me.
I think it was Robert was driving us around. That's right.
So like, how has your thinking evolved over the course of, let's say, the last 12 to 18 months when it comes to partnerships and referrals and this kind of approach, go-to-market approach?
Huge evolutions. And to be honest, it's a lot of narrowing of focus that's gone on for me in the last year.
Cool.
So go ahead.
No, very cool. Look, keep going.
So what was very common for a lot of partnership leaders joining like a Series A, Series B startup, just raised $20-40 million, has 100-ish employees, probably 40 people on a go-to-market team, right? What tends to happen is when we come in to be the one partner hire, we counsel 12 to 18 months before we get to predictable revenue. We've got all of these steps to go through to identify build the partner program, identify partners, recruit them, train them, onboard them, and build that trust and scaling. We don't have 12 to 18 months. Like the fact that I am a pre-seed department inside of a Series B funded company is true, but nobody cares. And so I'm not able to build the way that I should with the way that same business did when they were in the pre-seed stage. They forget what it was like to not have idea market fit yet. And so we need to do that again on the partnerships angle because we're building a whole new thing. So to answer your question, what's changed? I have gone through a lot of iterations to identify what is the thing of impact that we can do from a partnerships angle that involve trusted advisors outside of our company that can bring in new customers to us. And through a lot of trial and error, that's what's led me to referrals. And where a lot of people go first is to referral incentives. I give you 10% of the first year SaaS fee, to which I'll tell you most sales leaders out there is going to say, that's a distraction to my sales team. My sales team's still learning how to not feature pitch, instead solution sell, et cetera, et cetera. So like, I don't want to deal with it. And they don't like money coming in from outside. I set up my incentive structure to drive my metrics. So from referrals, I'm talking about mutual referrals, sales rep to sales rep at non-competitive companies. What is their incentive to send a referral? Their own quota, their own accelerators. But it takes finding a champion first, when we get them to send a referral, that person receiving it didn't trust you at all until that first time that referral got in. How do we shorten the trust cycle? I'm a little bit rambly here, but we shorten the trust cycle by bringing referrals ahead of ever receiving anything in return. Because we always do this song and dance of like posturing and telling like what I do well, what you do well, like maybe this is a secret like sale. And so there's just there's so much noise. And I just ignore all of it by, you know what? Look, how do I make a referral to you? How do you help your customers? Why do they need to work with you right now? That's going to help me understand how I can connect you with other people in my network. Now, a tactical advice to somebody who's just getting started in it. Because you're like, and I get this all the time where people are so on guard. They're like, Adam, what's the catch? I'm like, the catch is you need to show up and deliver to them. I'm not going to send you my Glengarry leads. Like, I'm not introducing you to Mike Simmons. Like, not going to happen. I don't know you yet, but I will refer to you. I will refer to you that deal that I lost 6 months ago that I know they had that problem that you solve. I'll introduce them to you, but I'm not going to say that I'm your advocate because I'm not putting my reputation on the line yet. So I'll caveat it and I'll say, Tom, meet Jane. Jane, meet Tom. I just met Tom. Seems like a good person that does X, Y, Z. You had mentioned a couple months back that ABC was a priority. Thought you guys would possibly have a good connection here. Over to you to make the magic happen. And so I'm caveating how strong of a relationship it is, but this is my test. Now I'm going to come back and I have an NPS style survey where I'm going to say to both parties, how'd that work out? And if the person I introduced you to tells me that you ignored them, that like this, you've got one shot. I'm going to lead with trust. But if you burn that trust, like I'm moving on to the next person. And I haven't risked much, but I've gotten a wealth of information that I don't have the time to go back and forth and like feel you out. We're going to just jump into the deep end and we're going to sink or we're going to swim.
Yeah, it's really.
And when people work well, now I start putting fuel on the fire. Now I start bringing the people that are much closer to me that I have a lot deeper mutual trust in. Those are the people that I'm going to now start to introduce to the people that have proven themselves to be super connectors.
I like the testing that you're doing here because your environment where you're mitigating risk, you're careful about the amount of risk that you're willing to take on. You're making an introduction. You're providing an opportunity for people to demonstrate capability in the real world by taking action and the work that they do. And we all know that people can talk a really, really good game. It doesn't mean that they know how to execute. They don't know how to deliver. And this is a great way to sift through that part of it. So very, very cool. So how do you think about networking?
I'm still figuring it out. So how am I viewing networking right now? If I actually take a big step back, I hated networking in person.
Okay.
Like you, like I don't remember which of your episodes you mentioned this on. It might have been on the failure podcast or a failure episode, but latching on to that one person and having the 30-minute conversation when we're supposed to be having, 32-minute conversations. I'm like, nope, I'm looking for the one person I can go deep in conversation with and really get to know. I also have that same predilection. And so in-person networking was always rough for me because the odds that you find and are matched with the person that you share common outlook, common markets, common approaches, and that like ability to actually produce together is so low. And that's why I love where the market has taken us with LinkedIn and with remote Zoom meetings, that we're able to vet a lot faster. The one thing that I don't like about networking, and a lot of my networking, I ascribe to LinkedIn, so I'll conflate the two.
Sure.
Is like, I don't care about having 1,000, 10,000, or 100,000 connections because there's Dunbar's number, which is you can have 150 relationships. Yep. Like we're all slightly elevated primates. And so like there's only so many real relationships you can maintain. And so nobody with 100,000 followers knows anything about the vast majority of those people and can't actually have mutually reinforcing relationships. So I don't care. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm trying to come up with a repeatable process where I can have my notes very clear about where's Mike's priorities, how does Mike help customers, what would be a good referral to Mike. And that way I'm setting myself up to be able to make these connections, knowing that I don't know how I'm going to benefit from it today, but I know that I'm going to make two people's days better. And that every time, if I take one action, two people win, then when I am ready to start making asks, I got a lot of chips in the bank. And I got a large bank account of connections that I've made. Now, when I get to go ask, hey, I'm trying to get into this company. Do you know somebody that's there? I've got a lot of people that are ready to help me out because they know I'm going to keep helping them.
This is one of the things I've struggled with over my time on LinkedIn. I'm fortunate enough to be Mike Simmons on LinkedIn, like no extra characters. I was on there early enough where my name was available. It's one of the only areas. I wish I would have bought a URL with my name on it way back when. But what I've struggled with LinkedIn is I wanted to build the network in that same way. If I was connected to anybody on LinkedIn, I knew various things about them where I could make a direct introduction right up until probably when I started the business. So that would have been like 7-8 years ago. Then I started to just connect with anybody, except if it's a bot. Like if a bot's sending me a message talking about how I've got this amazing profile and I would do great operating a business, I'm like, oh, okay, there's cringe component to it. And I had the conversation with someone recently. It was with Scott Leese. I had the conversation with Scott recently about the value of the network. And he would fall on the same, I don't want to speak on behalf of Scott, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway for just a little bit. But he would fall into the category of, no, you've got to go wide because there's this thing that happens with the large numbers that you're in front of. And I can tell you that I've seen that with posts that he's commented on where my exposure is much higher when that engagement happens. So how do you balance through this thing of, hey, we've got Dunbar's numbers and our ability to directly impact individuals. But if I'm able to work through these large numbers, I might actually be able to impact a number of people who I don't even know because someone they know who knows somebody else that they know might happen to see this stuff. So how do you juggle both sides of that?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. And Scott is absolutely right also. So how I balance that, the same as you, I think we've all gotten really good at being able to pick out the bots and like, no, I don't want an extra number for a bot. I'm not crossing that Rubicon. But for the others, yes, I'm definitely connecting with a lot of people that I don't know yet. And for that reason, there is that large network effect that it's at play. And so while whatever number of connections I have, I know a small fraction of them. So to make up for that, I'm spending probably 80% of my time on LinkedIn in the DMs. Like I don't do much scrolling. I do trying to keep up and not get swamped in my direct messages. And it's in there where I'm doing some of these initial questions and I'm trying to earn the trust of these people that have connected with me, whether I sent it or whether they did, to earn the trust to say like, listen, there's not a bot here. This isn't going to be a pitch slap. And I know you're waiting for it. And all I can tell you is you'll know that it didn't happen when it didn't happen. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to hope that you ask me something in return, but I'm not going to like push my own agenda. But I want to truly get to know, how do you help people? What do you care about? Why do people work with you? And it's with these like really basic, broad questions that I get to start to build a little profile of who and what they are. And they sit outside the Dunbar number because it's only in my notes that I'll ever be able to connect them with anybody. But I've got that second and third ring now where I have the notes, I have the context enough to be able to connect these two people that I don't know really well, but that's okay. It's mitigating risk. And as they do well, they start to move into the Dunbar circle.
It's really powerful to just kind of hear you work through this kind of continuum. And it's, look, what I'm doing is I'm shrinking the pool from this large ocean to a much smaller subset. And then I'm shrinking that a little bit further. And then I'm shrinking that a little bit further. And then I'm starting to connect those nodes together in a way that has a positive impact on others. What else, given what you've done now over the kind of your how your thinking has evolved over this last 12-month period, and where you're wanting to prioritize energy and attention, have you stopped in the last 12 months that you wouldn't start again?
Well, one of the things that I'm thinking back to being a partnership leader again and being the head of partnerships in a department. And some of the things in this market in 2023, I'm not going to recruit 100 partners. Like, I'm recruiting 5. I'm going to see success with those 5 before I ever worry about recruiting more. I am going to find my champions on the sales team. So again, thinking as the partnership guy, I'm going to find my champions in the sales org. I don't care if it's an SMB rep, an enterprise rep, a pre-sales engineer. I don't care. I got to find who is partner curious, who can see that the ocean is bigger than our little lake. So I'm not going to try and win all minds and all hearts. You can see there's a common theme emerging here. And I'm also not going to try and do as complex or cute of ideas. I'm only going to work on things that I can say, this is something that we can implement this quarter. And here is the theory around what we're going to measure to see impact next quarter. And if it doesn't fit that framework, then I'm not going to do it, because nobody's got the attention span, especially when talking about a partnership thing where the order of magnitude of complexities that come in when you work with our company and our teams, plus their company and their teams, it's already too complex. So it's got to get whittled down really, really small. Hopefully that's helpful. It was a little bit of generalities there.
Really, really good stuff. I think the question I've got around the questions you ask folks to get a better sense for who they serve and how they serve them and why those folks are important to serve. These, what seem like simple questions. Do people struggle answering those questions when you talk with them?
It's actually what's caused me to take another pivot in the business that I'm starting. It caused a 2-month delay in a major shift in what I'm building, actually. And I was really surprised by it, to be really honest. And it might be, so 2 reasons that I think it could be. One, and again, just as a refresher, what are the questions? What would a good referral be from me to you? How do you help customers? Why do they have urgency to work with you? That possibly it is because their own training, they're still stuck in features and benefits. And so there might be that evolution to solution selling that they haven't made that leap yet. So, this might be an enablement, maybe a training problem. The other may be trust, that they don't trust. Like, why do I want to know? Am I black hatting them? Am I the competitor that's just trying to sneak in and grab what their ICP is? Right? I'm not, but they don't know that yet. And so that's okay. So that still has made me shift my focus a little bit, but I'm working on ways. Another thing that I'm trying to do is iterate on my second order follow-up questions to those original 3.
Yep.
And it really is like consulting in reverse of when they give me the vague, I think I had someone who told me, well, I'm looking for introductions to buyers with budget that have an urgency to purchase now. Sure, that sounds good. I would like that too, but I need a little bit more context. And so I'm starting to build up this, by having these conversations and documenting them, I'm coming up with new follow-up questions that help ask the 5 whys, to have a little bit of more specificity in my follow-up questions based on where the vagueness was in the original responses.
It's cool to hear you talk about things like 5 whys and doing a bit more root cause analysis and going a little bit deeper into the thing that's coming up, because a lot of times it's the thing behind the thing that's super important, and people won't realize it until they actually see the thing. And then all of a sudden it becomes obvious. So there's this, and we smile about it. We laugh about it because it seems so obvious. I think we just get so distracted and so caught up in our own thing that we forget to get back to the basics, the fundamentals.
Mike, if I can interrupt you there just before you ask the question, because I think you hit on something that is one of my favorite parts about partnerships. And this really comes out in partner marketing.
Cool.
When our marketing team or our sales team is building our message out and we say we're centered on the customer and we're talking about the customer, we're not talking about us. Let's be honest, 80% of the time, we're probably full of ourselves and we're actually still just talking about us. But when you bring two tech companies together and now we have to do marketing together and we're telling this better together story, now it is so much harder to not be focused on the customer. By the fact that you bring the 2 or 3 teams together, and now like the one feature, like it's too clunky to talk about the different features together. You end up it forces you to talk about the customer and really get focused on their story. That clarity becomes really, really impactful. And there was something that you had just said in that really made me realize again, like that's one of my core joys of building partnerships.
That's pretty cool, because the thing that comes up as you're describing it is you get, especially technical founders, technical people who are driving marketing inside technology organizations, or maybe they're driving both sales and marketing, or they're, including sales marketing, product marketing, all of the different layers inside, where their perspective comes in and they want to just continue to just throw the features out. And I would imagine when you get them in the room and they're feature pitching each other, all of a sudden they start to get that smile, like one that you're giving right now, which is, oh, wow, we're really just turning something that we thought was going to be really simple and cool and help people into something that's now seems super complex, and people are going to want to wait until it's more fully baked.
100%. And even in the best case scenario, as you just described, we're just throwing features at a problem that if you know how to find it 3 menu layers in, it's cool and it'll do the thing, but it doesn't tell the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't hit on the emotions. It doesn't become obvious enough. And we just, we're just responding to the feature that our largest 3 customers required us put onto the roadmap, which is important. Like it's going to happen, but there's still this missed opportunity that comes out when we do co-marketing, when we have to tell this bigger, broader story, in bringing it back to referrals, when we see that I can make a referral to somebody else that solves a pain that unlocks my strategic prospect into now being able to buy me. And so now it forces you into the customer side. So you actually understand the full picture of that marketing team. If you're selling into marketing teams, that that if you're selling, I used to sell gifting software. That's only one small part of what they do. So if I know all the pains of the CRM, of the ABM platform, of the data platform, of the intent platform, of, automation, whatever, doesn't matter. All of these other things. Now I know where I plug into all of these things, and I can be the trusted advisor to that marketing team that may need to buy all of these things. They can come and look to me, not a 4.7 star review on G2. No offense, G2.
So let's shift gears a little bit, shift perspective a little bit. Let's focus on the buyer, right? So now that I'm the buyer I'm inside the organization that has the problem. How can I better engage with my extended team, the people who are outside of the organization that I'm working with? Heck, even some of the people that I'm inside the organization that I'm working with, to leverage their network to accelerate problem solving from my perspective, meaning what I want from them are referrals from them, not referrals relative to me being able to help and support and serve others, but referrals on who would they recommend I work with as I'm working through it. So what can I do from a buyer's, what can buyers do from their perspective to leverage the networks of others?
Yeah, and that's a really good question that I think a lot of sales teams would be benefited in thinking through. Because the reality of what are their buyers doing today is they're going into Slack, they're going into group text chains, they're going into communities of peers to say, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm thinking about getting this kind of a platform. What have people actually seen? Because the noise is only going up. And unfortunately, AI, for all of its great pluses, is that it's going to increase the noise because it's going to make it easier to generate more words. And I think that's what's going to push us to be more human, because our trust is going to continue to go down. And will that mean is I'm going to rely on Mike Simmons a lot more because I know and I trust Mike Simmons. And there are 150 other people that I'm going to rely on. And so getting back to like the core of your question on how would buyers do this to leverage their networks, I think it's important that just as an enterprise, that we should be encouraging our people to do broad networking, not just the sales team. The marketers need to meet marketers. The engineers need to meet engineers. Everybody needs to find their network. And look, are the engineers going to be on LinkedIn? Maybe not. Maybe they're going to be on Reddit, or maybe they're going to be on Stack Overflow or somewhere else. But they've got to find their community where they can take the BS away, not do the posturing that happens on open social channels, be vulnerable, truly say what is keeping you up at night that you think you're going to get fired over, because that thing is keeping you up at night, and just you need a safe space to be honest about it. And that's where these answers come from the buyer perspective. And so how you do it, you've got to encourage and show the people in your organization why having a big network matters. It matters more than just generating leads. It matters about getting better at what you do, and that it's also going to benefit them in their careers in the long run. And the best companies I know aren't worried about keeping talent forever, that they want their people to grow as fast as possible. And if that means they grow faster than the organization and leave, that's okay. They may become customers later too.
Adam, awesome conversation. I know you're working on some really, really cool things, and can't wait to have a follow-up conversation around not only new things that you learn, but how thinking is changing and evolving to address a challenge that, to your point, is going to become more and more important to address, because we're going to run into this challenge of more noise being out there. And how can we provide some kind of signal? How can a signal be provided that breaks through the noise and gets people to the point where they can start solving problems that are important to them? Where can people learn more about what you're working on and keep track of how things progress?
Well, right now, LinkedIn is probably the best place. We're working on the other go live branding, should be out soon. But for right now, LinkedIn's a great place. And if anybody wants to give the referral and trust building process a try, shoot me a connection invite that tells me that you listen to this on Mike Simmons' Catalyst podcast. And I just want to know what a good referral will be like for you, how you help customers, and why they have the urgency to work with you. And I'd be happy to try and find a match and make some referrals.
3 simple questions that you will likely struggle with answering. They may be really hard to answer. So do some thinking. Share that with Adam. Connect with him directly on LinkedIn. If you know of someone who would benefit from this conversation, would enjoy this discussion, please share it with them. Let Adam and I know via LinkedIn. We like seeing the shares. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about your process?